into the problem of evil. Let us begin with a question.
Kia ora, now my heart to another episode of Curiously Catholic, the Evangelion podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk to Rachel Holden, who I actually interviewed about 4 or 5 years ago, lost the file, found the file again, and as I was reviewing it, I realized lots happened in that time, and so let's just redo it. I might re-release that old episode because we did cover lots of cool stuff, but April works for Loving for Life. She's got amazing stories, thousands of amazing stories, and we're going to see what she can tell us today about the feminine genius. So without further ado, April, how's it going, mate?
Good. It's not been as long of a day as some, but yeah, for all of you mothers.
Keep an eye, yeah. Another day in paradise. I think it's interesting. There is a line in a song, I can't remember, it came to me the other day. It's like someone saying, like, we want paradise, but we didn't realize how much it costs. And when you realize that, you kind of, maybe not, seeking heaven, but it actually requires you to give of your whole self, and that's a big ask. And I think parenthood fits in that perfectly, And so, like, another day in paradise is like, this is what we want. That's what we're aiming for, right? We're aiming for a day in paradise.
I think when we're young, and we tell all the young people, like, it's going to be amazing. You're going to get married, and it's the whole gift of yourself, and you're going to do something awesome, and it's absolutely true. But day to day, it's a big job, and it's not as glamorous as it probably sounds when you're in your teens.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, I think as I'm kind of on this journey of entrepreneurship, trying to launch Evangelion, trying to get this podcast going so that we can actually make a difference in Aotearoa and possibly around the world, spreading the gospel. And what I've come to realize is actually there are some really big links between being an entrepreneur and being Catholic. And one of those things is it sucks until it doesn't. And the only time it doesn't suck, I think one of my favorite content creators on this, Alex Hormozy, says you only get cheered on at 2 points when you're starting business. It's like right at the beginning and right at the end, and both times it doesn't matter. It's the middle part you've got to master, and that's the process of going through it. And the same with Catholicism. You convert to Catholicism or Christianity, and all of a sudden, like, oh wow, great, let me hear your testimony. And then a few years down the line, no one wants to hear your testimony anymore. It's just you and Jesus, and you got to go through it. And then at the end, you're in heaven. So lots of people praising. Well, God providing, we're all in heaven.
I think you're right on the money there, Dom. I think that's often the case in a lot of times in life, is we have a honeymoon period, don't we? Whether it's when we first discover our faith, whether we're young or old, or whether we are getting married or going into vocation, whatever the new thing is, the ministry. I know I've been there too, the very beginning, and then 10 years in, it's an interesting journey. And I think reflecting, you and I were about the same age, but as you kind of come into this middle-aged 40 kind of lifespan, where things are fairly ordinary. You just have to do the day-to-day. You have to be faithful every single day to your call, and nothing that new often happens for a while in that stage. You go into this, but then you reap the fruits. So I'm told, a little bit later. But it's kind of this quiet period of your life where the job isn't doing the exciting things it did in the beginning. The marriage is settled. The children are there, and it's a be faithful in the quiet.
Yeah, definitely. There's this area that we have at work, and I just call it. It's just a chaos center of you can never achieve anything. It's the main assessment area at work. You can never achieve anything. You just have people come. It's a constant onslaught. It's the front line of, if you go in there to win, if you go in there to fix someone, it's not going to happen. Give up on that dream straight away. The only thing you're going to get to do is you're going to do assessments. you're going to relieve pain, and you're going to get them out of there if you're lucky. And then, so like, even if you had a really successful shift, by the end of your shift, you'll have a whole bunch of new patients that you're going to have to do the whole same thing again, and have a really good handover for the next nurse. And it's just a very unforgiving environment. And I think in that environment, which is very much life, very much parenthood, very much, you know, the mundane part of our faith or even work, you've just got to learn to find those small wins, those little victories of, you know what, we managed to get through a whole decade with the kids today. I don't remember it, but I definitely did do it, you know. So it's like those small victories and loving the grind. I think an undervalued or definitely underappreciated part of the of just being a Catholic, just being a husband, wife, mother, father. But yeah, definitely in this you know, getting to the 40s, it's an interesting time in life because it's not glamorous, so no one talks about it.
That's right, and you got to hold on to those little beautiful moments in the day, even if you have had. It's hard work. You really, I think, being a parent. I will say, I mean, like, I've worked hard in stages of my life for sure, but you know, and you think, oh, right, we've done some 70-hour weeks, but as a parent, you are there from the moment, from the crack of dawn. I won't even say when the sun comes up because it's usually before that,
Yeah,
especially in the winter, um, till you know, till all hours.
yeah,
It is you've got to be there, and you've got to be ready to get up and to say yes. You know, even when you want to play paper scissors rock with your spouse for who's doing it, but but you've got to give a yes, and do it with as much generosity as you possibly can.
yeah.
And then there's these beautiful little moments once you've done that hard thing, you know, whether
Mm,
it's that, you know, my kids tonight were, even though we thought we had avoided sickness and now it has just visited our home again,
beautiful.
but they got around their little candle, and they said their prayers, and they may have, I think they said something really really sweet, and they've recently started a dance for Jesus, at prayer time, which
Nice.
is highly entertaining, and so it kind of makes everything worth it because it's so
Yeah,
highly entertaining.
yeah. It's funny. I talk to other parents at work, and we start like talking about what our kids are doing, and then you hear some young 20-something-year-old saying, "You're not selling it," and I just say to them, "I'm not trying to." You know, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's like all I can
Well,
tell
what
you
are
is
you
it's
gonna do
worth
with
it.
your life? I think the thing is that, like, there's, you know, what are you gonna do with your life that
Yeah,
is actually more beautiful than giving yourself for someone else? And I think the thing is that it's really hard to understand on the other side, where the hedonistic pleasure of the world and all the consumerism and the free time looks so great, but it
yeah.
doesn't look so great. Um, Definitely, once you're sort of getting towards your 30, you know, you're bored of all that stuff. You want something.
Well, this is quite interesting because there's something I've seen online, a couple of different posts from different people, but it's a similar theme of people going online saying, "Look, I'm thinking about divorcing my husband. He's a great supporter. He's great with the kids. He provides for our family, but he just works all the time, and we don't do anything fun like we used to." And so there's one where there's this lady who's saying that, and then she never ended up doing it, but she was just complaining about it online. And then there was this other one which was actually a friend of somebody that did this, and she actually did get divorced from this guy. And then she was complaining that nobody wants to support me and my kids. What the heck? What's going on? Now everyone just wants to have fun, and now my now ex-husband has found somebody else and is supporting that family and is having kids with this other person. And it's just getting at what that kind of thing we're talking about here. Of there is a boring element. There's a boring part to this, and you just have to get through that.
And it is this stage where I think I'm seeing it also more and more, that, you know, you get to this sort of stage, and people do start thinking, about, yeah, is there something else out there, you know, or is this really what I signed up for? Is this the life that I thought I wanted, and not not seeing the beauty, not realizing how much, because we've gotten so used to something that was really extraordinary at one point.
Mm,
It's become something that we're just so used to that we take it for granted. And yes, the divorce and the affair culture, I think, at this stage of life really does start to set in a new way. Um,
mm,
in a way that I think when I was younger, I was like, how could people ever consider? How could they ever? And now you kind of get to the stage and you see how, if they don't keep the deep friendship and love
mm,
alive, and they really appreciate their spouse, and know their goodness. And yes, we are all working. We all have to work hard, whether you're out of the home or in the home. And you don't have the energy. You don't have some of that drive that you did when you were younger. But I do think that tempering of some of those stronger passions um, is actually when we have the capacity to do something great, to be more than our instincts in some ways, because we do grow a certain type of virtue if we lean into it. I think at this stage of life, I think there's really, I'm not saying I've done it yet,
mm. Yeah,
but
yeah.
there is the opportunity, and to see that there is the opportunity to really lean in and build the kind of virtue that is going to make you
Yeah.
the person that, yeah, okay, in 10, 15, maybe 20 years, can really look back and be that wise, stable grandparent,
Mm,
even, and spouse, that you're still holding hands till you're 80.
mm.
I think that this is the season where you build that virtue, and if you don't build it, then yeah, you can quickly fall into the disillusionment of, yeah, the divorce, the affair
Yeah.
culture.
And this is where I just feel so thankful for the church, because, like, in the mess of secular society and just the world and human life, we do have, I come from a broken home, divorced and remarried. Both my parents living in different countries, and now I'm living in different countries to both of them, and so you don't have that, like, I mean, almost idyllic now concept of your family are nearby, they're together, and there's someone they're a couple you can go back to, you can
Mm,
see the reward. So, like, if you come from a broken home, there's no
mm,
reward, and if you come from a broken like a family of divorce that then remarried, and you see actually they're happier remarried, so that's a possibility. And whereas the church is saying, no, no, there's till death do you part. You marry for the whole time. There is
mm,
no divorce. There is only going through it all, and then as you look more deeper into all the teachings of the church, it is teaching us how to, suffer well, to
mm.
misericordia, suffer with one another, and go through life, and praise God for Jesus. What an example.
With you, my husband and I think one of the things that we really have we really thank God for the church every day. I think even more and more as time goes on, and I know that's really hard to sort of maybe understand, because we're kind of, I hope we're not too dark for everyone, but no, like, but there is a sense that, like, the church's wisdom, especially as we come into this time in life, is just so rich. And I look back on some of the young married couples, or the people that I teach, that are still kind of at this beginning stage of vocation, and yes, every joy, every hope for them, but that there's that you see the warning signs, because the church's wisdom is so great that if you do not lean into that teaching, and don't lean into it once when you're 20, but keep leaning, go deeper, wrestle harder with the church's teaching, especially when it starts to really feel like a cross. And I know there are many people who sometimes feel that way, and they give up, and
Mm,
they think, oh, the church, like, it's too hard.
mm,
It is very much it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, it's been tried and found hard. And especially in some of those times in life where we feel weak, and we feel hurt, and we feel like we've lost our grip, I guess, on getting things right. We lean in really hard, and go deeper, and it'll heal you, I think. But it's not going to be an easy journey. I wish it was overnight, but for many people, they may have to lean in and wrestle for quite a while.
No, yeah, there's a lot to sit with there. Just to think about. Yeah, we are going down a bit of a dark alley.
Yeah, I
But
don't agree. Like, there's so much good. It
I
outweighs
think it is
all.
just like again, it's one of those things that people don't talk about much, and it's you could put it down on the surface. It's like people don't talk about being in their 40s. People don't talk about they might mention oh, marriage is difficult, or having kids is difficult. There's no specifics. And again, it's not because the specifics are all different from person to person, but there is that kind of there is no mention of that grind. And I think the grind nowadays is all about making money, but the OG grind was about making a family and building kind of just a legacy. I think that's something that's really not with us today. I was just listening to this episode of Diary of a CEO recently. I'm actually thinking about doing a episode of my podcast reviewing it because so much stuff was touched on that was like, if we don't stop and think about this, you're missing something amazing. Basically, this globally renowned physicist Eric Weinstein was talking to Steve Bartlett, the guy who does the Diary of a CEO, and he basically there was this clash of Eric is in geopolitics in the scientific world, and he's seeing the apocalypse, and also he's an older gentleman. He was around just after World War II, and he's got all that, and he sees, oh, we don't have what we had there, and he's kind of beating up Stephen, saying, hey, why don't you want children? Why do you not care about the future? And Stephen's just being a pure millennial. He's like, why would I care about the future? I'm not going to be there. And it's just that logic, and yeah, it's so interesting. You have to watch the episode. Hopefully, I'll be able to get my thoughts together and do an episode myself, because basically, Eric's an atheist, and he's promoting quite like literally at one point religion. He's saying you should pray, you should go to church. He tells Stephen that both of them are atheists, and it's just so interesting about basically Eric's coming from this very kind of pessimistic worldview, or maybe realistic, I don't know, of, we're currently got a couple of world wars going on, and this is big news, and everyone's just saying, okay, how can I sell my NFT? We're missing out. What's going on? And there's this struggle within Eric of, I really love tropical fruit, and I'm wondering which one I should buy next, and a couple of supersonic missiles just went into a major modern city. How do I live with that? And religion is the answer, which is kind of where he gets at, but it's interesting. It's interesting. This is the world we live in right now, and the answer is what the church has told us, which is build a family, have a legacy, because your riches will be taken away, your health, your strength will be taken away. So you can optimize and operationalize all you like, but at the end of the day, and this is kind of the pessimism of the millennials, like, yeah, I'm just going to be dirt at the end of the day. I said, but you could be in heaven.
There's no hope.
Yeah.
And I think that is very much the thing, is that we know that there's a huge population crisis coming in the world. We are just so far below replacement in the West, and it's not something that we're going to potentially be able to really fix. I don't know how we'll face it, but the building a family, it is so countercultural. In our parents, definitely in our grandparents' day, you understood that you got an education, you learned a trade, um, you entered adulthood by taking responsibility, by marrying, usually young, and by having your children, and by working really, really hard, your 20s, your 30s, for sure. And it was the grind, but it's what grew us up, but it's also what made us, because you and I both know having children, you know, it, it makes you something different than you, than you could have. I'm not saying you can't do that with spiritual children too, but for sure for most of us the call is by entering in this way that makes us, and it's redemptive, and talking a bit, we might get to the feminine genius eventually, but the idea of, that the fall, what is the curse, which the church says is also our remedy. We're If you're a good parent and your child fails, you're not just there to rain down punishment on them.
Mm.
You're there to discipline them, so that whatever their consequence, it's also going to help them change direction. And when it came to the fall, the two areas that became our redemptive suffering in some ways is, for men, right order in work and in the world, and for women in particular when it comes to children and family. I'm not saying we
Mm.
don't do both in both
Mm. Mm.
ways, but we in a particular way, our redemption, and our struggle. And my husband will tell me this all day long, is for him to get right order to work, that work serves the family, that work serves his place in the world, and how he is Christ in the outer facing of society, and the way he employs, and the way he earns money, and the way he views money.
Mm.
For me, it's not that I don't struggle in those areas or haven't in the past, but it's not really the same. It's not the same fallenness. Whereas for women, and I think the feminist revolution shows us this in
Mm.
particular, the running away, in lots of ways, from the call to be mothers, not only in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, which is our first call. That you have a wife and you have had children, and the I know the toll it takes, for me to have the courage to go into a first trimester,
Mm. Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah. Definitely.
to face birth, but and the whole process and the whole self-giving, especially that first year with a baby,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's big. It requires everything and more, and for me to reach out, um but also, I guess, and call me crazy, but for me, with every birth, even, I often pray that God would teach me something about what it means to be a redeemed woman,
Mm.
and I know that with my firstborn in particular, which was, for many women, it's a hard birth. Your body hasn't done this before. I just had such a deep and profound realization, beyond probably what I'd had before, of, this is my body broken for you. This is my blood,
Mm.
whatever it takes,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that wrestle is just then. It's all the way through, but these things are what shape us and make us. And for so much of society that's running away from this, that's using their 20s to be hedonistic, and you spend all your money and all your time on yourself, and then we do everything that we wanted to do in life, and then we embrace responsibility and marriage and children somewhere in our 30s if we can. And for many people, they're just kind of putting it off to the degree that we just don't do it at all anymore.
Yeah.
um, our forefathers knew that by embracing some of those things early on, the 50-year-old woman, the 50-year-old man, has such a richness of what they can give back. They become matriarchs and patriarchs to
Mm.
society, um, you know, and not just, people who have been, I don't know, playboys and playgirls who have then entered into marriage, found it hard, given up, and kind of become, I don't know, like, am I being too blunt? Like, I'm not saying everyone. This is more just society has sort of sold us this
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
that somehow we can go this way, and still reap the reward later in life, that our forefathers kind of knew that some of the richest times in life, and the graces and the fruits, you get them, later. You get, I'm not saying, you get the big house, you get the money
Yeah,
later.
yeah,
Whereas now we want to go in and we want to have it all when we're 20 and live like our parents do at 60.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
very backwards. But if we could shift that a little bit to understanding that actually the reward comes after the hard work, um, we would be better as a society. We'd be better people. Um, we'd be better parents,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because we would understand the value of hard work. It's hard to employ someone these days, I hear, because they kind of expect the world to do, while doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I was just watching this. There's this thing called Jubilee, and you get like a whole ring of people to sit around a main speaker, and everyone comes and challenges them. They often like Christians versus atheists, or conservatives versus Republicans. And they had one recently with a guy called Patrick Bet David, and it was capitalism. He was representing capitalism, and everyone was coming to challenge him about capitalism. And his whole thing was basically he's stinking rich, and he says, "I'm going to solve every single one of your problems. Everyone comes up to me, I'm going to personally solve your problems." And like there's this one guy who says, "I've applied for over 100 jobs, and I haven't got any employment. I've tried, so I haven't tried. It's not that I haven't tried." He said, "Okay, I'll employ you right now. I'm offering you a job right now. You just move to Florida and you'll have an amazing pay packet." Da, 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 da. And the guy was like, well, I don't know. Maybe if it would fit with my values, and it depends. Like, would you need a job or not? And so there is that kind of attitude of trying to make the world mold around you rather than allowing the world to shape you into who you will become. And that's really difficult. That's because then and like in marriage, in relationships, that's what you're faced with. You're faced with yourself and how crap you are. Like that's like the
Someone who's
humor
watching,
side of. Pardon?
someone who's watching you all the time.
Yeah, well, the humor side of it is that I never realized how much I didn't wash, like how much more I needed to clean myself until I lived with a woman. You know, just as a matter, like, wow,
Most of them do.
I'm really disgusting. My wife's like, are you wearing that t-shirt again? I'm like, yeah, it smells fine. Turns out I have a really bad sense of smell. But all the like those are the little things. But then there's the bigger things of, you know, changing your life to accommodate somebody else, and you both do that. And like I remember I was on a panel at some youth festival once, and me and my wife were representing the married couple on the vocations panel, and someone asked me what the question was, what was the best thing about your vocation? And like it kind of hit me in that moment. It's like the most amazing thing is the fact that my wife would change who she is even a little bit to take me into consideration. Like she'll say, actually, I won't, I don't know, shower in the evening, I'll shower in the morning instead. Something simple, but like something she's done her whole life. She'll change that to accommodate me. And, you know, I guess from my perspective, it's like, of course I'll do that for her because, you know, I don't even shower enough. But, you know, I've got a lot to learn. But like, you know, you've got to take those moments and notice them because they do happen. And I come back to something you were talking about is realizing, and this is kind of goes back onto the initial topic that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Something that I keep re-realizing and is the different roles of men and women. Now, not to say women belong in the kitchen or like
Yeah.
stuff like that, but it's just interesting because as I've become a father, become a husband, or become a husband first and a father, because I've become those things, all of a sudden I've become responsible in a bigger way, and so I've had to actually think about things like how do I earn money, and not just I'm becoming a nurse because I love nursing. So okay, now I'm a nurse. Why don't I get paid enough? This is not enough to live off. How do I get more money? And then going down that route and thinking about like how to, you know, just grow a family, how to get a bigger house, how to get a bigger car, things that like I realize I think about those things, and then I bring it to my wife, and she says, "Why are you worried about that?" It's like, because I'm a man, And that's what men worry about. When we think about these things, and that's why we end up doing, like, typically men end up doing certain things and women end up doing other things, because men don't think about the things women think about. What was the
Right.
name?
And it's I think you're right on the money. And like, and you don't want to be, I don't want to, because I think the thing is that capability wise, men and women, like, it's not so much what you're able to do. It's what will help you probably thrive, that you sort of have to figure out that balance. And biology is a very powerful thing. We try to get rid of it in our modern world, but the moment that your wife, like, when my husband and I were first married and we were both working, and things still changed when we got married, that there is still a changing dynamic of then a man and a woman living together, and I will say, to all those young people and people in the world who are worried about, men and women, is that there is no place that you will learn to reverence the opposite sex more and understand them more than in marriage. Because that, like you say, that mutual self-care of, I'm rearranging my day, my life to bless you, and vice versa, and having that kind of partnership that transforms you exponentially. And that kind of respect and reverence for men, for women, that you learn in marriage and you should be perfecting in marriage, you take that out into the world, and that's what gives you harmony. It's
Mm,
not, these are my rights and my demands and this is how I'll be treated. It's love that brings that to fruition. And the moment biologically that, that you that your wife becomes pregnant, everything changes, because that vulnerability, that capacity, that ability, that she has outside of pregnancy changes so much. And then when she has young children as well, that what you have to give her in your protection and your providing, um, makes her feel so loved and so safe.
mm,
um, and it also makes you the more the man you want to be, and she enables that in you
mm.
and raises that up. But then also she can become more the woman that she wants to be too, um, by being served, by being cared for. And look, again, we don't like to think about it, if you go to, Ephesians 5, this idea of mutual submission.
Yeah.
But then, Christ talking about how men and women interact there. It's a formula for love, is that when
Mm,
you when you give your when you treat your body, your wife, like you would treat your own body, where you sacrifice yourself for her, she feels loved, but you become more like Christ. And when she is able to put herself under that mission that you have to love her, she becomes free in a sense that as men and women, we just work better when men don't receive first, but actually give first and then
mm.
receive. And when women receive first and then give, versus giving and then receiving, we just work better that way. We feel more loved at a deep level. It's not that we can't give, it's not that we can't receive, both of us. But if women receive first and men give first, love is healthier.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there is the risk of, like, nowadays everything gets too kind of, also, like makes it a bit too mathematical. Of okay, men give and women receive, so that's why they go well together. Women do this thing and men do this thing, and that's why they go well together. But it's like on a deeper level, because the giving as a kind of like concept and receiving as a concept are expressed in so many different ways, but also at every level of the human. Like,
It is.
we talk about theology of the body and the giving and receiving. Like, there's the physical element of it, and that's obvious. But then there's the spiritual element, the theology of it, of the theology of giving, which is its, or, philosophy. Didn't JP2 do a thing called phenomenology, which kind
Mhm.
of means he can reach these things? It's talking in these circles, and that's because, you know maybe to listen to, and if we're looking at the most efficient way of putting across a message, it doesn't work. However, the most necessary way, like the best way of learning is going through, like experiencing. If you want to learn language, go to Spain, hang
Mm.
around, immerse yourself, because then you'll understand, like, not just what the words are, but how they're spoken. Um, whereas you could just read a book. I can learn all these words and I can say these words, but then you'll make a fool of yourself because that's not how people speak. Every other language isn't English, just in with different words. They don't have concept of certain things, whereas this, one of the concepts that is throughout the whole of humanity, time and space, is male and female, giving and receiving. You know, the moon receives, the sun gives. We see this again in Spanish, in these Latin languages, that we have male and female because of the disposition of the object, not because tables are male. you know,
That's right.
but like,
And it's bigger than that, even, like in the sense of like, I think as Catholics, we have to be really careful not not to only be, I guess, aware of how the world has influenced our thinking of men and women, but even how certain heresies have, my husband and I talk a lot about even how much, especially in New Zealand, how much Protestantism has infiltrated Catholicism, and even the understanding of men and women, that, that even that somehow this complementarity is something that's so easy to define, as if it's like that we're two halves that make a whole. Whereas in
mm,
Catholicism, we don't have that. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is two wholes. That we have two whole people who are coming together on a mission. And so, yes, there's an element of giving and receiving, but there's also all these other dynamic factors within the male and female gift
yeah,
that are not easy to boil down. In every
mm,
relationship, in every marriage, you have to kind of figure out what works with your gifts, and how even, you take postures so that I can help my husband receive,
mm,
so that he can help me give of my gifts,
mm,
and you kind of figure that out as not so, I don't know, it's, I guess, as Catholics, what's wonderful about it is that it's not narrow. It's
mm,
not narrow. The
mm,
church gives us guidance, and then it gives us a whole lot of freedom
yeah,
to figure these things out, when it comes to, how we run our household, how we work, how that partnership works together, how we educate children,
yeah,
um, how we serve at
yeah,
a parish, and it makes us very, very powerful, if we wrestle to get that right.
yeah. I like what you were saying there. We are not two halves that make a whole, which again, that's kind of how secularly and empirically and scientifically we kind of envision things. That, okay, this makes sense. It goes together. Like, my favorite is with you know, using sound equipment and electrical stuff. You've got a male and a female end, and the male end fits inside the female end because it's the giving and the receiving. And it's like, okay, and that's how we view men and women, because very practically speaking, that's how it makes sense.
And that is an
But
element.
yeah, that's an element of it. But
It is an element.
it's missing the whole thing. And again, it's reducing us to our parts. They say,
Yeah.
I think it's Chris West that says, it's not that pornography shows too much; it's that it shows too little.
Mhm.
And that
Reducing
whole
us to our
two
parts is very,
holes. But sorry again.
yeah, they're reducing us to our parts. That's exactly, I
Yeah,
guess that's exactly sort of on the money, because when God creates us in his image, he creates women in a way to show in the world an aspect of God that men don't.
yeah,
And he creates men in a way to show an aspect of God's image that women don't. But
mm,
we do know that together we give a fuller image of God,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
communicate something about God into the world, and yet we are two distinct images of God in the world,
Mm,
in a theological sense, I guess. And so we have that wholeness, I guess, as well as the complementarity, but that doesn't mean that we're deficient. Yeah, deficient. What am I saying?
yeah,
Because there is a sense of, yes, we belong together, um, and yet we're not two halves.
yeah. Well, I guess it kind of helps you make sense of religious life. Like,
Absolutely.
because if women were incomplete without men and vice versa, then religious life is abhorrent. It doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. You are remaining incomplete. However, and like we see this even in like non-religious situations. Florence Nightingale. She didn't get married. She was a woman that gave she was female in her area. We've got I can't think of any, but I'm sure there's men that were celibate their whole lives and achieve amazing things. But like most obviously within the Catholic world, we've got monks, we've got nuns, we've got clerics, and we've got sisters, and they're not incomplete. They are beautifully, wonderfully made. They are completely whole as God intended them, because He called them to that. So He wouldn't say you're called to be incomplete. you know,
Yeah. And they're
he's
still in relationship, but at the same time, yeah, we come with a wholeness, which is richer, isn't it?
oh
It's so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
If we come with our wholeness to serve one another. I don't know. There was a good. I think maybe it was Edward Shree. He talked about that when Eve is created, she could go and do anything. She could go and be a lion tamer. She can go,
yeah,
but she chooses to help Adam. She chooses that mission of relationship, and vice versa. That's the most enriching,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's not because it's absolutely something that she needs. And I think that that's a really healthy way, is that if you're wanting to go into a vocation, and you're doing this because you feel incomplete, and you're looking for something that the other person can give you, that you're trying to take because of something that's missing within you, it's not going to go that well. Because
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right?
come as a whole. You're trying to come as a whole, and none of us are perfect at it. Like, there's always going to be things,
Yeah.
and I look back on my husband and my relationship, that when I met him, I was in my teens, my late teens, but there was something in me that just sort of said to God, if you give me this man, then I'll be happy. And
Right.
I'm so grateful, and it almost subconsciously, but there was something in me that had to heal and had to grow, and I'm so grateful that, um yeah, it took us 14 years to get married. Obviously, there was some
Yeah.
learning to do, but
Yeah.
in mercy, in
Yeah.
mercy, that God does that in lots of areas of life,
That's yeah.
for our great for out of his great love for us.
That's so
It's hard.
interesting. Like, because again, I feel like we're touching on lots of things that are we're saying one thing that could mean another. So like, we've talked about like so many things. The thing that's talking like in my mind right now.
Sorry, Tom, probably got off track a little bit.
No, this is brilliant. I think we're the thing that I'm not very good at and kind of annoys me is, in order to have a video that gets lots of likes and views and things, it's got to be the 5 reasons this happened. The 5 points of the feminine genius, and then we go through 5 points, and I can't do that. I can't narrow things down that well, or I can narrow them down, but then I can't expand on them, or if I would expand on them, it would be far too much. And I feel so my kind of angle is just this long form where we just talk about stuff. It's like we are talking about feminine genius because you're bringing that to the table, and I'm just asking you questions about it. But bring us back onto the topic of we're talking about being complete, one whole person, but not not waiting to be complete. So that idea of, you had to wait 14 years before you got married is like, oh, because you were incomplete before, but then you became complete and then you could get married. And it's like, no, you were a whole person at every point during that. So like that difference between wholeness and completeness, and like, this male and female. Is like the two male and female parts that stick together. Yes, that's part of it, but that's not what male and female is. XXXY, yes, that is, but that's not what male and female is. One of my favorite commentators, Michael Knowles, says the most accurate representation of, or definition of, the difference between men and women is, boys are slugs and snails and puppy dog tails, and girls are sugar and spice and all things nice. It's not accurate, but it tells you what women and men are without saying this is what they are. Then, because we're not just an XX and an XY. We're not just, two genders. We are a whole person, which is different on every level, but very similar on lots of other levels. And I think, going back to...
And unrepeatable. And so, there are as many different types of women as there are women in the world, and there are as many different types of men as there are men in the world, because God made you a masterpiece, with all your faults and failings, and therefore, but but you are one kind. Like
Yeah.
I think when I'm pregnant with a child, I'm not just pregnant with a human being. One of their main markers from conception is that I am pregnant with a human being that is either male or female. There's only, there's two varieties. Now that is going to mean a whole lot of different things.
Yeah.
But that is what that is what I am going to give life to, because when we are made in God's image, that is part of the criteria, and it's a good thing. We want to fight it. I think we often find it a burden, especially us as women. I think most women, when you really drill down, do we feel like we're a blessing to the world, or do we feel like we're just hard work? um, and to kind of overcome that, which all goes back to the fall.
Right.
All goes back to the fall, as to how we view ourselves, I guess, as men and women, because, um, I guess, how we feel on a very deep level, um, usually corresponds to one of our original wounds. Um, and our original wounds create an enormous amount of complexity as to how we, I guess, live that out, but also then
Mm.
how we experience redemption in our own lives. Um, and I think that's part of the uniqueness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think men and women are awesome.
We are.
But yeah, so like we have this wholeness to ourselves. At every point in our life, we are a whole man, whole woman, and we're not looking to be complete. Completeness and wholeness are two separate things, are they? Because I guess, well, because what I was trying to get at is, like, going back to what you were saying, is like you didn't have to wait 14 years to be complete, so that you were fully whole, so that you could be in a relationship with your husband. But there was a I get, there was something missing. You did still had to go through a process, but that didn't take away from your oneness and completeness. That didn't take away from who you were. Um, yeah, I think we're touching on lots of topics, like words like that, like wholeness and complete. Men and women don't complete each other. They're whole in themselves, but when they come together, it's like they're two wholes, which would be more whole, I guess. But
It's the complementarity. It's the
yeah.
thing, is that you're not becoming so much complete, is that you're actually able to exercise your complementarity, and I think that is what, gives us this joy of purpose. It's not suddenly, I'm complete, but it's the joy of Adam, is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Is that, like, it's that you haven't so much completed me as you've allowed me to give of myself. You know,
Right.
you've your who you are has brought me the joy of being able to love in the way that I was created to. You know, when we think deeply about, you know, I'm kind of going back to Genesis a lot, but you know, it's the key to many things. But you know that when you know God creates Adam from the dust, from the earth, there's something very matter of fact about men, and there is a simplicity that's incredibly beautiful and stable and important to creation about men. But when God creates Eve, it is so different, you know, because he creates her from Adam's rib, Adam's
Mm.
side. You know, and you're a nurse, you know your biology, you know what do ribs do? You know, what is their function in the body? Um, they are the protectors of the heart.
Hmm.
They are, and the lungs, and the life, and there's something about the fact that God from his heart, um, from from his mind, gives Eve to Adam to breathe life into him, to protect his heart, to complete his heart, to teach him to love in a new way that that causes him to really rejoice when he sees her. It's exciting, you know. And there's something really amazing and beautiful about that teaches us something about the fact that, you know, you have to look at you know, the different layers of Genesis, but there's something beautiful about the fact that as men and women, we give each other the opportunity to love as God loves in a very particular way, and that's why we're drawn to one another, not because we should be, you know, incomplete, looking to be
Mm.
complete, because we're looking for a mission to love as God loves, because that's the image in which we were created, and we enable that in one another on
Yeah.
so many levels. You know, yes, giving and receiving, you know, mutual giving and receiving.
Mm.
um, and that's beautiful. It creates more, you know, it creates more life. I mean, literally, yes, but you know, it creates more life in so many other ways, even if we never had children, you know.
Mm.
If we think
Mm.
that way, life in us, life in others. Marriage is a gift. You know, it's a sacrament of service. It's one of the big things we talked about when we got married, is that, like, just like ordination, this is a sacrament of service. This is not about us. This is about what we become for the church and
Right.
for the world. You know, what we can give by having this union.
Yeah, and I think so. The correct right way. So we've been given this gift of complementarity, which we see when two whole people come together and they bring more of the other out in each other. So again, it's beautiful in that it's not transactional. It's not you give me this, I'll give you that. It's I'll give you this and you'll become more of what you are, which will make me more of what I am, which will it'll be exponential. It just keeps
Exactly.
growing. And
And it's so much as well that, like, do I really know what it is to be a woman until I'm in contrast to a man?
right.
Does a man really know what it means to be a man until he's in contrast to a woman? That often we really discover who we are more when we're faced with someone who is different,
Yeah.
but designed to be complementary. You know, like, because, you know, me in relationship with the cat or the tree, or, you know, I'm not going to figure out what it's going to be. It's really hard for me to figure out what it means to be a woman in that context. But with a
Mm.
man, there's something, because of the design, you know, that's when we discover really what it means because of the difference.
Yeah, yeah. I always think that, like, as much as this isn't the answer to our problems, it is also the answer to our problems of just get married and have kids. Don't stress about it. If you got married and have kids, you wouldn't have as many questions. You know, in because
Start the
in
journey.
because it could because of the complement because of like on the empirical level, if when you get married and have kids, your options reduce. You're not traveling the world anymore. It costs too much. It's too dangerous. You're not career jumping. You're not playing games anymore. You're taking life seriously because you have to, because you got the responsibility. But also because you are faced with who you are, because you are faced with who someone else is, and you are able to bring that out. And because of everything we've talked about, it answers all the questions. Like, and we get into like I don't know if the problem of feminism is the right answer, but we get into like the feminist worldview. And you mentioned earlier how you're talking about our brokenness and how it comes at the original fall. And I have this theory, and I'm not going to die on this hill, but I feel like the part of original sin is in men. We are, our role is to take control and to lead, and as women, the role is to be under that mission and serve, just as broad concepts. And then when we give way to sin, men will sit on the sofa and be served, and women will take control and lead. And I feel like we see that in modern life and in this feminist kind of. I feel like we're a little bit less feminist now, but in this feminist kind of mindset of women saying, I'm going to take control, I'm going to do the man's job, I'm going to be a better man than that man. And men go, oh, sure, yeah, you take it. And then all of a sudden we get like, metrosexuals and all these people that are more into their image and a lot less masculine than like previous generations. And so that's my theory, and I'm running it by you.
Yeah, no, you're on the money in many of those. I think if you explained it, if we go back to that original story and what you're sort of describing, many theologians and many psychologists would explain similarly. But uh, if you think about what happened in the garden, what goes on, God has tasked Adam to guard the garden. That is his job and everything in it. So he has been given authority um, over the garden, over the created worlds, to protect it, preserve it, um, and somehow the serpent enters. We're not really sure where Adam is at this point. Did he see the serpent? Sometimes it's translated Leviathan, dragon. Does he hide as it comes through the gates? Is he off? I don't know, sunbathing, and he's laid down his post. But somehow Adam is not is not doing what God has told him to do, and something bad happens. The serpent enters, and he finds Eve alone. So again, you have to ask the question, where's Adam? He goes for Eve alone, and Eve is taken advantage of. Um, there's the Sunday school version of Genesis, and then there's the deeper theological version of Genesis, and it can look very, very dark, because the garden has many metaphors in the Bible, but particularly it's a place of joy, it's a place of safety, it's a place of plenty, it's a place of new life. Song of Solomon's will talk about a woman's womb as being a garden. My sister, my garden enclosed. And so on a theological, level in Genesis is the Bible's very explicit that the serpent enters the garden, um, and that Eve in this state of vulnerability, in this state of violation, experienced this deception, that she is sort of, that God, that Adam, somebody's not there, and she needs to take this fruit. She needs to believe the servant's lies, and 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 as I sort of went back, her curse is not for all of creation. Her curse is for women alone, whereas Adam is the ground itself is cursed. Creation is cursed because of Adam. And it's almost like, imagine a man, who has fallen down at his post, and he suddenly gets there, and here's Eve with the serpent. And what does Adam do? He's silent. The silence of Adam, many books have been written about it. This echoes sort of loudly in
Mm.
some ways, that he is silent and he takes the fruit too. It's almost like, a man who's been given a task, a man who's been given a task by God and has failed, instead of going, no, I'm going to correct this. I repent. I'm wrong. It's just so easy to be silent
Mm.
and to go into the darkness. And so, on a theological, on a psychological level, many of us would sort of say that man's original wound is a real sense of not being good enough, and that every man has this deep feeling, and whether he needs this affirmation from his father or from other men or from whatever it is, he has this deep sense within him that he does not have what it takes. And so, to respond to that in a fallen way, there's a spectrum. Either he can decide to become dominant, um, and show his power, to show that he is good enough and trample everyone underneath it, or he checks out. He lives in his mother's basement and plays video games for the rest of the day. No engagement in the fight. And there's this giant spectrum of often how men will respond to this wound, this very deep wound within them, that they do not have. They have the fear that they do not have what it takes, and in their shame of that, they respond with either dominance or complacency. And so, obviously, women suffer under that, and it creates a disaster. Um, whereas the redeemed man looks at that wound, that ancient wound, it's in every little boy, and says, "Yeah, I don't necessarily have what it takes. I need God to do this." Um, and I'm not going to check out, but I'm not going to use the power that I have to trample those underfoot. I will use it to be strong, to defend them, to stand up, even if I am afraid, even if I don't have what it takes. So you've got that scenario for the men, but for the women, we have, you know, one of our deepest wounds, again, similar to man's, but different. Um, Not so much we don't have what it takes to live up to God's mission, but we're not worth it. Adam abandoned us. We're not worth fighting for. We're not good enough. And so every woman who struggles with beauty and all the other things, a lot of it is a response to that wound, because a woman who doesn't feel that she is worth fighting for, in her fear and in her shame, she either again has a sense of domination of, I'll just do it myself. I don't need men. I don't need
Mm.
God. In lots of ways, the secular feminism goes right down that road, is that we got to get rid of it all because we got to do it ourselves.
Mhm.
No one's going to do it for us. We're not worth protecting. We're not worth defending.
Mm.
Or we become a doormat. We just,
Mm.
again, a different type of checking out, but we let you step on us. Um, and we go silent. We don't speak up. I think, I don't know about you, but my husband will often tell me that some of the times he respects me most is actually when something comes up where it's not completely right, and I speak up for it,
Mm.
in love, but in a way that is respecting of him and his own. But actually, it's like, no, we can do better. No, we
Mm.
can make a different choice, and in our shame as women, often when we don't feel like we have men in our life that will listen to us, but who value us enough, that we're worth it, we say nothing. And it is sort of that, again, there's a spectrum of how we often respond, whereas the redeemed woman knows she's worth it,
Mm.
knows that she is a daughter of God, that even if no man fights for her. And I think, you have to, in a redeemed version, even Mary is alone with Joseph, almost wanting to abandon her in her pregnancy, and yet she knows God will fight for her. She doesn't lose courage, she doesn't check out, she doesn't take the reins. She A redeemed woman responds very differently. And I think in marriage, one of the ways that we heal one another of those original wounds is, we often have this, whereas, men need respect and women need love. There is some truth to that, again, because I do think that a wife who can tell her husband, I respect you, you have what it takes, I know you can do
Mm.
this, that heals a man on so many levels. Even if it's something his father never told him, um, it does heal him on so many levels. I do think, on a deeper, we still have to hear it. We still have to believe that with God first, that God knows that we have what it takes, that God knows we're worth fighting for. And a husband really heals his wife by being, almost that proactive, you know um showing her that she is worth it at every point, that he's proud of her, that even in her struggle, that she is worth fighting for. Um because when that happens, we open, we soften,
Mm.
as women. And I think as men, you know you don't open and soften as much as you stand up.
Mm.
You stand up, and you can stand up to the world. And we heal each other as men and women of those sort of original wounds in a very profound way, when we love each other, I guess, in that way. So yes, I guess, coming back to your question, is it is very much like that. But I think, if I were going to lay that's, and I'm quoting people who are much much smarter, who've done a lot of study in this area, but I think that does sort of hit the money very well, to look at men's wounds and women's wounds, and then also how we respond in our fallen nature, but also how we can heal one another,
Mm.
um, so that we can, I guess, come to our redeemed nature,
Yeah.
which ultimately has to happen with God.
Yeah. It was so interesting as you were telling that. If you, as you were, I say, telling that story, as you were unfolding, the Garden of Eden in that theological understanding, in that deeper interpretation. The effect it was having on me was profound. I was just like, it broke my heart listening to, putting myself in Adam's situation there, and facing the reality of what was going on in that moment. It was quite confronting, and yeah, it so perfectly outlines the shame that I guess we all feel when we don't live up to the call that we have on our hearts, the purpose that we've been given here on this earth. And I thought that was just, yeah, wow, just really amazing to hear, because I guess I've never really. I mean, I've done Bible in a year. I'm a Catholic, and I've been to mass,
I've
but
I've spent some time with Christopher West. I blame him, and a
yeah.
few other people who've worked in that. It's a really profound reflection. I think
Mm,
the first time I kind of heard it as well, is like, you feel the truth, because it echoes. It echoes. We
yeah.
we talk about original innocence. When we talk about theology of the body, um, that was before the fall, and there's something so deep within us, that echo of the original
Mm,
situation. It's the most profound story, and
Yeah.
I think that, like, the Hebrew word for man when he's created is zakar, which means to remember. To remember who you are, remember your purpose, remember
Mm.
your call. And the original Hebrew word for woman is nekuba, which is to be open, to be open to life, to be open to love. When a woman is truly open to God's grace, well, for one thing, you can conceive Christ, but we all are meant to, but there's a
Mm.
sense that we bring God into the world in a very particular way, that women can create so much life around them, a
Mm.
vibrant, healthy, daughter of God who's open to his grace just flourishes everyone. Whereas a woman who is closed, who is hardened, um yeah, the flowers on the ground around her die, like, um
Mm.
I hate to sort of put it that way, but there is a sense that there is so much power in what women and men can do in the world when they
Mm.
live in their redeemed self, when men remember God's call to you, and
Yeah.
your ability to give life, to protect, to provide, to fight, that there is just such a gift in that. And and for women, as well, when we open ourselves to God's gifts and to your gifts, um there is a real fruitfulness, on a physical level, but psychologically, emotionally, intellectually. But when we're closed, when we're hardened, and that is that original situation, like, what
Mm.
happens to Adam and Eve? They see this nakedness, this vulnerability, and it's not so much about the physical nakedness as the fact that they are afraid of each other. And and the woman, in her fear of the man, she closes and she locks down, and the man as well, he is afraid of what she could do to him, and so, he's almost responding as well, in a cold and hardened way. And when men feel controlled by women or manipulated by women, you can see that, and often there is a violence, there is an anger in response to that.
Mm.
um, but when we open to one another and receive and give, we we become fruitful rather than sterile ground, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. So beautiful on so many levels. You see a lot of that today. I don't know if it's the kind of incel community where, but I don't think that is. I think it's just kind of like these modern generations of kind of, if women aren't gonna act this way, then I'm not gonna act that way.
Yeah.
Attitude,
Yep.
and it is that I feel like women have hurt me,
Yep.
because of how they view men, and
And
if
I am
that's the way
so
you're gonna act,
sorry. I've
yeah.
seen no, seriously, I have seen that. Like, we often flip it the way that men are these terrible towards women, but my goodness, I have seen it the other way. What women
Mm.
have done to men, and really broken them in a way that they really struggle to recover.
Mm.
Um, we too have a
Yeah,
lot to be sorry for.
yeah, yeah. It definitely goes both ways. Um, it's an interesting dynamic. But I was just thinking about how you see it in the world nowadays of this kind, yeah, almost resignation to the worst part of each gender. Of masculinity's toxic, and men's reaction to that is fine. Then, if that's what you think, see how that goes. I've checked out,
Yep.
and I think as a bloke, I can see that perspective, but at the same time, I think um, you know, a more bringing it a bit more of a lighter example. I remember seeing this video, and there was this girl, and she was talking about a date she'd been on, and she said, "Oh, I was with this guy who's an absolute chad. Definitely not the kind of person I would generally go out with." But whilst we were on the date, he just turned to me, gave the credit card, and said, "Order anything you want. I'm just going to go to the toilet," and came back. And in that moment, she turned away from this hard and feminist woman, which she generally was, looking down on this guy because he's athletic and masculine, and saying, "Oh yeah, that's toxic. That's horrible. I don't know why I'm even here." And all of a sudden, she became, "Oh wow, he's providing for me," and I,
I know what that does to you, eh? Very deep.
Yeah, well, and I think the solution is, and it kind of, you know, when like, to put an image to it, it's like there is a gun to your head, and the answer is, okay, shoot it, because I'd rather sacrifice myself and save this woman. Going back to that image with Adam's silence, it's
Yeah.
like the gun to head or the knife in the heart in that instance is, I'm wrong. Just take that bullet, and that's the play that no one will tell you to give, and everyone thinks is the losing battle. It's
Yeah.
the sacrifice play,
Mhm.
and that's Jesus's play of, the devil did not see this coming, where Jesus would die on the cross, and that's what he
Right.
called us to do. Going back to that Ephesians quote, it was love your wife as God Christ loved the church. It's put yourself in that situation with Adam and Eve, and in that moment, own it.
Yep.
Say, this
Well,
is
that
my
is the
fault.
reversal. That
Pardon?
that is the reversal, isn't it? Because I mean, what is the reversal? Of we say Mary is the new Eve, Christ is the new Adam. you know Mary, almost in her abandonment, she knows God will not leave her. She knows God will fight for her. She will open herself even in the darkness, even when no one stands with her, and she will bring Christ into the world, and she will be loyal to that, without fault, and because Christ comes into the world, like, how does Christ, you have this, I mean, you have the reversal of Genesis on so many levels, but Jesus goes into a garden, you know, um, he's alone, he's abandoned,
Mm,
it's dark, the serpent is there telling him, give up, and he says, he doesn't want this cup, but not my will, but your will. you
mm,
know and I love the Pieta. I feel like,
mm,
people think I'm nuts, but for me it is the summary of the suffering of the world.
mm-hmm,
Mary is holding her dead child. It's every mother's worst nightmare, like, and after everything, after all the promises, after all the miracles, after everything, you're holding your dead child, and you have every opportunity to give up, to say, this is enough. She's still open. She still believes. She still has faith that God is going to come through on his promises. And from that almost decision, the resurrection, is beginning. That the new life, that comes, is then imbued with this incredible richness, that we all can become in some way like Mary, in some way like Jesus, that
mm,
we now have the capacity. We may not get there in this life, but we have the capacity to say yes, to open ourselves to grace, to not lose faith, um, to love in a way that's stronger than death. um, and I think it is absolutely profound, because as we go into, I guess, the feminine genius of what John Paul II sort of talks about, is he says that women now have, you know with this new capacity of the genius of a redeemed woman in the world, they're there are many things that men and women share in common, but women in particular have four things that are very significant, I guess, to how they live this redemption. And one of them is receptivity, and receptivity in a particular way that we really can open ourselves to God's grace to be transformative in the world. And yes, that there is a sense of new life coming from that receptivity, but that we also have a deep sense of sensitivity, that our emotional life is not, if it can become something, because yes, women have an emotional life that is different than a man's. So
Mm.
that you guys don't have emotions, but there's something so big about the emotional life, I guess, of how God has created us as women, that it can be something that can feel a bit more all-consuming, and something we can't really put aside. And if it becomes self-seeking, it can become very destructive, I guess. But if our emotions are put at the service of others, um, we have an incredible sensitivity to perceive the pain of others.
Mm.
It's very much a Mary stands at the cross, and she's not the one crucified, but a sword pierces her heart. She
Mm.
also feels the pain of the world. Like, she also, women have a real strange capacity to enter in, to suffering in a very different way. And yes, partially, that it has become so bodily for us as women, that it happens. Men have to, men are fathers. Tomorrow's Father's Day, and you enter, you almost, you choose to become fathers. You're fathers because you give of yourself outside of yourself. You're donative. Whereas for women, it sort of happens within us.
Mm.
Transformation, it's so close to our very selves. Like, it's not something that's just happening to our body, it's happening to us. This a friend of mine the other day, who watched his wife give birth for the first time, he says it's like a death and resurrection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There is a sense of that, that there is a real degree uh, of dying and coming to life, and it's so close to us that we really have a deep sensitivity. Um, but again, it can be used for good, or it can be used for not so good. But um, Mother Teresa's feast day was on Friday, and she's a beautiful example of a woman who really suffers with the world. She sees the needs of others beyond. John Paul II says, beyond the physical. Is that, yeah, you can see that child's hungry or starving or dying, but to see something much deeper, it's very much a mother's heart to watch her children, and not just make sure they're clothed and they're eating and they're napping and whatever's going on, but very much of where are they at emotionally. Where are you at? Where are you at? What do you need? What do you need? What conversation do we need to have? And God has given women something beautiful to give the world in that regard, and in a complementary way towards men, because men, it's not just that, as some people would say, women haven't been given the opportunity to build the rockets and invent the light bulb and whatever it is that women are so people centered. And it's one of the reasons why, as well, John Paul II talks about the marker of generosity, that women are so people centered that um, men often create the things that meet the human needs when women and men work together. Women often see the human side of the problem, maybe. Um, Men often make it possible sometimes with their love of things to meet the need, to that how do I explain it, give a good example. um you know um but maybe you know what I mean. That there's a sense that there's a connection in our complementarity, often of working together, that we
Is it
see different.
like men can
I
build
don't
a
know.
house, but women?
It's dark in the room. The children can't see. You create the light bulb.
Yeah.
I don't
Men
know.
build the house, women create the home.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, again, like, it's not about capability. It's not that women can't create the light bulb. You know,
Mm,
it's more about the fact that we just tune into certain
yeah.
things in a very particular way, and and work better in that kind of partnership, most of the time. Most of the time.
We just have different focuses in that, I suppose,
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
element.
But I guess
Um,
that fourth aspect, just, I guess, to give you the four, is that maternity, and I think for all women, what women need to hear is your call to motherhood is firstly spiritual. You're called to be a spiritual mother first and foremost, and that's what will give you the capacity to be a good physical mother. Many of us will be called to physical motherhood as well, but not all of us. But every woman is called to be a spiritual mother for souls, and to shelter, and to um, really, I guess, nurture, foster, bring to life, the souls of others. Because, guys, all of your inventions are great, or all of the tasks even us women do and achieve, are great, but they will all fade away. They really will.
mm,
But the only thing that will never fade away is the immortal soul, of those we give life to. Um, and so our call as women is to be a
okay.
sanctuary for others, a place where they are safe, where God dwells, um, and where they can grow in their understanding of the good and the true and the beautiful. Um,
I'm just going to pause you there. My laptop's about to run out of battery.
Sorry, you
Hope
we
I've got.
typically
I'm
go.
just going to grab my charger. Hopefully, it doesn't die before I get back. Hold the phone. But anyway, as I was thinking, the thing that was striking me, um, as you were saying all that wonderful, like, I think we've just come to a really deep part of what we were trying to get to, which is, what is this feminine genius? And we started talking about how our 40s are awful. You know, we've come to this element of life where it's not glamorous and people don't talk about it, and there's no guidance around it, partly because of the world we live in, where families are disparate, or broken up, but also just because it's not a seen part of life. It's not a part that you would write the book about. It's always
No,
the love
under
story.
30s are the really popular people.
Yeah,
After you
yeah,
pass 30, especially after 35, like,
yeah, and with good reason, because, like, it's not overly romantic, and it's not this big crescendo. It's the bit after the crescendo. Once the chick flick has ended, they don't carry on. You might get, like, kind of a montage of, oh, they had kids and that's really cute, but again, it's highlight reel. It's not the middle of it, which is the grind. And that what is genuinely male and what is genuinely female is more than what you could capture on a camera, and in fact, so much more that you wouldn't want to capture it on a camera, because it's, just as my colleagues who are younger than me, when they hear me talking about parenthood, they say, "You're not selling it." So I'm not trying to. It's the same with life. If you want to be a man, I'll tell you about it, but you're not going to want to do it. It's not. I'm not selling it to you. Um, and same with being a woman. I think, it costs so much to be in the garden with the serpent and to sacrifice yourself. And even though, men do it in a particular way and women do it in a particular way, that's the That's the genius of humanity. It just, you do it on different levels. Some people say it's like macro versus micro. Men think on a macro level, build a house. Women look at a micro level, make it a home. And neither is lesser, neither is more. They're just different, but the thing that remains the same is the sacrifice involved.
But you also feel alive. I think the thing is that like you forget about, that this is what makes us great. I know when I was, I think I don't know, 3 5 years in, I don't know, after starting a ministry, and like you say, the honeymoon is gone and all the excitement, and my spiritual director, I remember he told me that this is the most important time, because after that, when everything goes quiet, and he says, you see people do this in business, you see people do this in life, with kids, and is they kind of pull back and there's a quietness, and it's after that stage, depending on how they enter into that stage and what they do with it, that then something much greater than the excitement of the beginning comes. um and I think you could almost put it down to, there's this, when you think about, let's go with us in 30 years, Dom, when the kids are grown and hopefully there's more money and there's more time, um and we pray that if we do this well, we'll still be sitting next to our spouse, God willing, um and there'll be a real deep sense of peace that
Mm,
we've done something great, and that there's great joy, um, and that somehow we have brought Christ into the world in a different way by the way that we've lived out our vocation, um, and that there is a fruitfulness in us and in those around us and in our children, Lord willing, that we can go back to our home. We can go back to the garden, the redeemed garden, and know that we have used our time well. And I think that there is something great and beautiful in living life that way, that when we were 20 and they told us just make a lot of money and have a lot of relationships and
mm,
serve yourself, that none of that would have ever lived up to, because even if you did that for 5 minutes, eh, it will sooner or later get boring. But
mm.
what you've lost in the process, where you could have been using that time and that energy to, you don't know how long you'll be single or what vocation God will call you to, but it is the preparation ground, not just to waste your time and waste your money, but to build yourself so that you can have the virtues to make yourself a gift to someone, if you're called to marriage, or to the church, to the world, depending on if it's more in a single or religious
Yeah,
vocation, and you will find a great fulfillment, I think,
yeah,
that the world can't give, and that all the lies that society has taught you, won't fulfill,
yeah, yeah.
but it's hard to tell people that until they live it.
Mm,
And it's
and
hard right now in this sort of stage of life, I think, for many of us to see beyond this stage of life, because it's hard. You have little children, days are long, nights are
well,
long.
and we need to. And like people say this, and it's a bit tongue in cheek. Well, not tongue in cheek, but it's a bit cliche of like, don't miss it. This is where, like, that guy Eric Weinstein, he said in that episode of Diary of a CEO that he hates the fact that he believed the lie that he was told, that you need to get your children trained up and get them out the house,
Hmm.
because he would give everything. Like, he's traveled the world, he's spoken with world leaders, he's met amazing people, and he would give it all up just to have kids back at home again. And I think there is something profound about that. And I think there is a lot distracting us from the beauty that's right in front of us, be it, and like, again, there's this romanticism that I think kind of blinds us to the real beauty of the reality. When you say, "Oh, the beauty that's right in front of you," the beauty that's right in front of you is a vomiting child, after having not slept for weeks, and that's not beautiful, Dom. Shut up. I'm not buying that. Well, I'm not selling that. I'm just telling you that in that moment, you are the solution. You
Yep.
are the thing that you are the person that little human needs. They don't need anything else. They just need their mummy or their daddy to hold them because they're terrified and they're vomiting. And you are that person, and that is better than anything. And we can blind ourselves to that because vomit stinks and kids are smelly and they're icky and they're horrible and they're loud and they're
Really
obnoxious.
used to bodily fluids. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I 100%, because like even uh, I'm 2 days in from having very little sleep,
yeah,
and we've had sickness in the house today, and I had to just sort of go. I'm just gonna stop and
yeah.
let my 3-year-old just sit on me and sleep,
Mm,
be sick, and
yeah,
she did. And when she woke up, she wanted to know what she was like as a baby. And the 1-year-old came over as well, and the same, and we just looked at pictures and little videos of when they were both babies, and I almost don't remember it, like
yeah, yeah,
but the preciousness, they both calmed down, they both perked up, they both were just so full of joy
yeah,
to see themselves as babies and as playing together, and
yeah,
and it does make it all worth it, those little moments
yeah,
of great joy, because you are their world.
yeah,
You are God to them, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you are their first call. Does God love me? Does mommy love me? Does daddy love me?
Mm, mm,
Unconditional. Are they going to tell me, like, how are they going to respond when I am at my weakest,
yeah,
when I'm at
yeah.
my most vulnerable? Um, and so it's a big task.
Yeah, and I think the answer is just leaning back into that, like, who you are. Like, the solution to kind of modern feminism is a man that stands up and is a man. And the answer to toxic masculinity is a woman that presents herself and is a woman in the face of, I always think of when people talk about like relationship problems or you hear about broken marriages, I just think of Saint Rita. And in her life, she was, had an abusive spouse who she gave birth to two boys that were abusive to her as well. And then eventually she entered into religious life, but she did it. She did it faithfully, and it wasn't beautiful, and it wasn't nice, and it wasn't good, but it was exactly where she was meant to be, so that God could love her in a deeper way. And I'm not saying, oh yeah, don't worry about it. God loves you. Even I'm not trying to put it.
Don't go walk into an abusive situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, no.
yeah, yeah. Definitely get out of abusive situations if you're in them, but you know, in the solution to that problem was men being men.
Mm,
The solution to, she was being a woman. She
mm,
looked after those boys. She looked after that man till they died,
mm,
and then she entered into this religious life, and she carried on being this whole woman, this whole
mm.
person that she was created in the very beginning, and she lived it out fully. And I think when we're faced with the world that is saying whatever it's saying about men and women, the answer always is be a man, or in your case, be a woman,
Mm.
and be who you're created to be. And when the world is faced with that, they can only react in the most appropriate way. Just as if someone's running at you towards you with an axe, the most logical thing to do is to step out the way. When a woman, or a man, presents himself as a man to a woman, it makes the woman more of a woman. and vice versa. And
It will also make people angry sometimes. I had this conversation with a bunch of university students the other day because they are often in the face of a lot of toxic, very very toxic femininity, and sometimes you being a bright and
mm,
beautiful and happy and not angry at men woman in their midst makes them even more angry.
mm,
And sometimes if you're a man in the midst, and you've seen this, and I know my husband had, a man in the midst of other men who are just trying to use girls
yeah,
or be, or be greedy and hedonistic, and and you show yourself as a chaste man, you show yourself as an honorable man, there's don't be surprised when the devil rears his head,
mm,
um, because there is a sense that you're going against the grain
yeah,
of what real men and what real men women should be, and they've sacrificed themselves to the wounded nature,
mm,
and the devil's making full use of it,
yeah.
um
And
and
that's
so
what
into
that
that midst you may not make friends initially,
yeah,
um
yeah.
but
But
keep
that's when the
doing it,
sacrifice
keep
play
doing
comes
it
in.
anyway.
That's when you're faced with, the horror in the garden, and you say, "This is my fault," and that's the sacrifice play. It's the book of Jeremiah, you know,
Yep,
the
it
tortured
is.
prophet,
The
and
suffering, yeah, the tortured, yeah, the
yeah,
suffering,
it's like
the
he's
one
like
daily.
that's his like he was, it's really beautiful.
Mm.
He's faced with the world, and he says, "No, that's not right,"
He's constantly a
and
bleeding
he
heart.
he's given. I was listening
He's
to
doing
Father Mike.
everything.
Yeah,
What was the reading the other day? He was put in the pit, and they were trying to kill him, and and somebody had to save him, and he just got what a rough life. Like, and
yeah,
I think that's the thing is don't be surprised. We say this is all beautiful. We say this is all good. It is, but persecution is also very very real when you
mm,
live up to the image that God has
yeah,
put on
yeah,
you. And there's many many stories of saints and in scripture alike.
yeah, yeah,
Susanna comes to mind, that show that when you are a righteous man or a righteous woman, the world will hate you,
yeah, 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 yeah. I think, yeah, just
but
pray
they
to
will
God that
also respect you. They
just
will
pray to
also
God that
respect
your journey's not that of Jeremiah, I guess.
you. Me too.
But like, yeah, I think, and that goes back to that entrepreneurial like kind of perspective of, if you tie yourself into a bad situation, be prepared to deal with the scenario. But the entrepreneur is, um, I'll create a good situation out of this bad situation. And like, the Christian story is, God is that good situation, and you'll see this good situation, um, in the person of Christ. And it is the sacrifice play, but after the death comes the resurrection. There will be joy in the morning, not just in like the sadness of mourning, but in the next day. And the next day isn't 24 hours, but there is a redemption to our suffering. There is a God that loves us. And I think remembering that, and I think that's the tough thing. Like you mentioned earlier, like something that really struck me was like how the name for man is remember. And I remember hearing someone saying something to the effect of, the problem isn't that we don't know what the right thing is, that we need to be reminded constantly. And we had Father Dalton over, and he taught us about the Shroud of Turin and all the amazing facts about that, and the truth that we have scientific data showing the resurrection of Christ in this cloth, and it's just, I say it's undeniable. He told me it actually is deniable, but that's a whole other story. There's a podcast about that. You should listen to it. I
I
did
love the
earlier.
shroud. I've been to the Pontifical University. I think
Oh
it's one
my
of the most
gosh.
amazing things. I think I was even intrigued before I became a Catholic of the shroud, because it is. yeah, it is very much,
But yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
he came over.
Remember. I mean, the Bible's constantly on about remember the Lord. We human beings have the shortest memory span.
Mm,
It's the people in the desert where God has just performed great miracles and parted the sea and moved heaven and earth, and 5 minutes later they're worshiping a golden calf. Like
yeah,
we have we
yeah,
forget.
and
And
we look down on
Mary's
goldfish.
markers is one of Mary's markers is that in art she's always pictured reading the scriptures because she is a woman who knows what God has done.
Yeah, and well,
Therefore, you can
from
say yes.
that tour that we did, I was my heart was changed. I mean, it's not that I was on the fence about it or anything. I just didn't know about it. But then, I was giving this call to people like, you've heard this information now. Now, what are you going to do about it? We can't just sit on this. We have to do this. Has to change your life. And I feel sad because I feel that, like, yeah, that zeal's definitely died down in me. Like, I can't remember all the facts as easy as I can. I'm not still telling people about the shroud, which would be annoying, but at the same time, what else is there to do than tell people that Christ rose again? But I feel like we're getting off topic now because we're talking about the feminine genius. But like, yeah, it's that sacrifice play. The answer. Yeah, so the answer is being who you're called to be in that male or female and doing that in the deepest sense. But the romance of it, don't let that get in the way. Because the romance of it is, that story I told. A guy was truly masculine to that feminist woman, and all of a sudden the feminism melted away, and she became a girl again. And she became a woman. And she was ready. She had that receptiveness. But also, there is the reality that that guy, up until that point, was hated by that woman. And there are a whole bunch of other women like that would never have given him the time to give them the credit card and let him provide for them. And in fact, in seeing that, they would have looked down on him and hated on him, and he would have had to deal with that. And I suppose, yeah, it's remember be willing to do the sacrifice play. Be willing to say this is the truth and what. And if in pray to God they go, oh, is that the truth? And they change their minds, because the alternative is, they'll set you on fire. They'll cancel you. You'll lose your job. You'll lose your livelihood. And there is that fear, but there's also more to life, which is the basis of life, which is just you have a family, get married, have kids. It's amazing. It's not romantic. It doesn't look good, but it's the
Yes.
answer. So I think that sums up everything we've said. Is there anything else you'd like to add to bring the whole conversation to the end? We've been going for about almost 2 hours, if that's including the technical difficulties.
You I think you've probably covered most of it. I hope I've at least touched on the feminine genius. I was going to say there's a lot more depth, I guess, to that whole topic, but
Mm,
it's a really good way to sort of start thinking about that, as women in particular, you're not a burden. You are worth fighting for, and you are an absolute gift to the world, in being the woman that God has created you to be. It's not easy. It's not always pretty.
mm, mm,
But you do have something to give the world that only you can give.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, and yeah, it's hard to remember that, but please do.
Yeah, yeah. I am going to
I hope you
release.
discover it. I think the thing is that you hope you discover it because it
Mm,
is something we have to discover, and we can only discover it through God's eyes. It's just like,
mm,
it's like that you are loved because He loves. Like, we, eh, you discover that you're loved in someone else's eyes.
Mm,
Your children look at you and they want to know that they are loved, and they discover that they are loved by looking at how you respond to them. And I think if
yeah.
we as women, if we can discover how much God loves us, and lean into that, see ourselves through his eyes, through his you know immensely loving eyes, hopefully we will remember our own dignity, or discover it, and we need to, because only when we know, our deepest identity, is that we are a son or a daughter of God. Nothing else is ever allowed to take that place. I may do many things in life, and categorize myself in many ways, but if I, at my fundamental death, if I know that I am a beloved daughter of God, and that is the lens through which I live my life, um, that's when I can be who God has created me to be. Um,
Mm,
Never outside of that. And everything else is just a wee little add-on.
mm.
It's a sub CV. um,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think that's what we have to do.
yeah.
That's
Getting, as we've spoken a lot about the Book of Genesis, is getting to the genesis of everything. Um, it's knowing, yeah, who you are and what you're called to do, and the rest doesn't matter. Like, it's what your job is doesn't matter as long as you're being the person you've been called to be. Um, yeah. So the details of, can you build a house doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. The details don't matter. The fact that you do it, as a man or a woman is what's important, and doing it as a child of God and living out your vocation. And for some people that is as a religious, or a prophet as Jeremiah does, or a religious as Saint Francis of Assisi does, or as a family man or a family woman, as other saints, Saint Gianna, and so on and so forth. That's what it is. And some people are doctors, some people are builders. Some people are nurses, some people, and you can look at the statistics and you can say that women generally are like teachers, nurses, this, and men generally are engineers, this and this. But that's fine, whatever, sure, yeah. That doesn't matter. And when push comes to shove, it still doesn't matter. You're when you're faced with Adam's dilemma, and you speak up, and you face the music, and you're burnt. All that matters in the end is that you did what you were called to do, and that is found in who you are, which is a son or a daughter of God. How's that?
I think that sounds good.
That sounds good. Sounds good. Brilliant. So, if anyone wants to find out more information about yourself and the work you do, where can we find that?
Well, you can go to lovingforlife.org.nz, and you can give us an email, or contact us. We do a lot of different types of work, but mostly we run theology of the body based programs in schools, and youth groups and parishes, and then we do some things on top of that, I guess, as well. But hopefully that helps. And we provide a lot of resources for parents. And we're about to launch an online platform for parents as well, for programs, because trying to teach our kids, and our young people, what their call is as men and women, and all that I guess means, when it comes to relationship. It's one of the biggest ways that we witness in the culture today. My husband would say that, how do you know often that people are Christian? Look at how they spend their money, look at how they live out their relationships, and that will tell you pretty quickly where their heart lies.
That's true. Yeah. That's good wisdom. And I do have that initial episode that we did 4 years ago, and I think I think I wasn't going to release it because it was so dated, because you'd only been married 10 months at that point, and now you have 2 children, so obviously there's a lot going on. But I think it adds a lot of context to what we've said, so I'll probably release that this Wednesday, and this episode the following Wednesday. So this will be out in 2 weeks from today, which is the day before Father's Day. And hopefully next time I talk to you, it won't be in 4 or 5 years, and we'll have you back on, or we might even bring you up to Auckland and tour you around and see what we can, what kind of a mess we can stir up. How's that sound?
Sounds like a possibility, and hopefully I haven't said anything wrong.
Well, let's find out. The internet will let us know.
In the last one, but hopefully it helps for someone out there that might be thinking about these topics, and that we're all called to give what we've received, and so if that can bless you, then wonderful.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I'll be praying for your children as well. Hopefully they get well soon.
Yeah, we're about to get a winner.
Yeah, I know that we're in a hospital, working in a hospital. So thank you very much, Abel, for your time, and thank you all for listening. And again, if you want to get involved with Loving for Life, go and check them out online with all the detail April just gave us, and all their links will be below. And get involved with Evangelion. We're trying to change New Zealand. We're trying to bring Catholicism to those people that don't have it, and bring more of it to those that do. So if you want to get involved, do like, share, and subscribe on all our socials, Instagram, YouTube, and the like. And if you do feel that you have the means, please do consider donating, and of course, pray for us. So thank you for listening, and God bless. Right, well, there we go. That is a wrap.
In with the problem of evil. Let us begin with the question.